So once more, happy Friday, everybody. Excuse me. Let's get started like we normally do. Short period of bell meditation. Wherever you are behind your avatar, please get into a nice meditation posture. And as I ring the Ching bell, the idea, focus on the sound of the bell. Really get that deep listening going. Really get ready to absorb some Dharma today. You're probably going to get distracted. It happens. When it does, just gently remind yourself and go back to focusing on the sound of the bell. Then there'll be the pause. Then I'll do the 3 recitations. Then we'll get on with the talk for today. Happy Friday, Holly. Happy Friday, Kayla. Welcome. Glad you joined us. So again, short period of bell meditation. I'll give you a moment, get into a nice meditation posture, and we'll begin at the sound of the bell. Oh, Jake, I think it's the sound effect one. Hold on, let me look. Yeah, the one that says sounds, and then you'll hear the bell. Or you should. Let's give it a try. Let's see if you hear it. Can you hear the bell? Oh, excellent. All right. So again, give a moment, get into a nice meditation posture, and we'll begin at the sound of the bell. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the teacher. I go for refuge to the Dharma, the teaching. I go for refuge to the Sangha, the taught. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I have taken refuge in the Buddha. I have taken refuge in the Dharma. I have taken refuge in the Sangha. 3 pure precepts. Cease to do harm. Do only good. Do good for others. Bodhisattva vow. However innumerable all beings are, I vow to lead them all. However inexhaustible my delusions are, I vow to extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, I vow to master them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, I vow to follow it completely. Swaha. Oh, there we go. Now it's working. So, let's get on with the talk for today. Today, the talk is about thoughts of enlightenment. As any of you know that if you've been looking at the Buddhist path for any amount of time, enlightenment is one of the big key words, right? One of the buzzwords. So we're going to talk a little about that today. Not what enlightenment feels like, because we don't really know, right? It happens differently to each of us, but there are things that we can recognize, okay? So there's a question that each of us eventually has to not only ask, but we've got to answer it, right? We kind of go into Buddhism often to ask this question, that is, how am I going to be? Basically, what path am I going to choose now? And then we have to answer it. Because for better or worse, you make decisions that affect how you are. But you also make decisions that affect how people perceive you. Right? So they can get that misperception if you're not offering them the real you, so to speak, right? So you'll have to decide what you want your life to be. So it's up to you, right? Our parents can kind of try to guide us. They can even try to literally push us in one direction or another. But in the end, we decide, right? But then once we decide how we're going to choose to be, then we've got to go about building that life, right? We imagine it, then we work toward it, and we build it. Now, as a human being, you are empowered with the freedom to engage in self-cultivation. You can deliberately mold the way you live and the way you interact with the world. That's what we're setting out to do when we practice, right? You can act as an agent of positive change. But hey, you can act as an agent of negative change if that's your choice. So you have access to the knowledge and you have access to the tools that you can use to make good choices, or better choices even. And you can use it to actualize a social self using that imagination that I mentioned before, using the courage that it takes to set yourself on a path and stick to it, and the integrity that it takes not only to engage in rigorous self-honesty, but also to engage in, let's call it social honesty. So that social self then, understanding deeply that it has a unique role in the universal causal process, then it can go on to do things like cease to do harm, or to do only good, or to do good for others. Deliberate, positive self-cultivation opens the body-mind, opens it in such a way that it can realize moments of enlightenment and can go on to engage the world. So, thoughts of enlightenment. And then moments of enlightenment. So, I'm going to hit you with a parable. You know, I like to do these contemporary parables. This one is called Riding the Merry-Go-Round. Excuse me again. Constantly grasping and searching for enlightenment as a goal reminds me of riding a merry-go-round and trying to snatch that brass ring. You know, there's the person on the carousel horse. You know, they're going around and around, but they are totally focused on trying to reach out and grab that brass ring every time they go around. And with each revolution, they lean way out and they stretch as far as they can, and they find that it's just out of reach. They are certain that that is the goal of riding the merry-go-round, that if they don't get that brass ring, then their ride is just not successful. The ring in hand, they can proudly hold it up and they can say, I have it, and you don't. Then there is the person who rides the carousel with a completely different intent. They are aware of the motion of their horse going up and down, the bright music, the little girl in the pink dress riding the goofy-looking bunny, the elderly couple in the sleigh still holding hands after 50 years of marriage, the breeze that carries the aroma of cotton candy, and in the center of the carousel, there's a mirror that's reflecting everything. These all become part of the experience, and they connect to those around them through that shared experience. The one that's grasping for the brass ring, they want to be the person who starts and stops the ride. The other person wants to help others enjoy the ride. Wade stood watching the carousel going around and around and contemplated which choice he would make. So we're back to choice, right? We can choose to be the person that constantly struggles and only sees a goal, whether it's a good goal or a bad goal, but we can also be the person that sees life going on around us, sees the interdependence and the interconnection while still going for that goal. But the goal sometimes isn't everything, right? We have to change that path to get there. So we have to make a choice. Welcome, Nouvre. Glad you made it. Happy Friday. So, just a little parable about the merry-go-round. So in practice, this ideal human state, this idea of enlightenment, begins with thoughts of enlightenment. And that leads to a more constant state of awareness. It leads to the realization that we have moments of enlightenment. And these things come together. They're kind of the gathering ground for bodhisattvas in training, right? Trying to get that constant state of awareness and trying to realize these moments of enlightenment. The Mahayana Sutras, specifically the Prajnaparamita text, offer 6 essential qualities of the ideal human state. And when we look at Buddhism, if we're thinking about the ideal human state, people kind of look at that as enlightenment, right? Well, these qualities are both a vehicle that we can use to reach thoughts of enlightenment, but they're also a mode of practice and a desired state of body-mind. So they're all really interconnected and interdependent on one another. So the 6 refinements, you'll hear them called, sometimes they're called the 6 perfections, and these are those essential qualities: generosity of spirit, awareness of ethical choices, accepting, energetic and vitality, put into our practice, a meditative calm, and the possession of wisdom. These are the things that we not only use to reach thoughts of enlightenment, but they are in their own way that desired state of body-mind, that thought of enlightenment. And the only way we get there is to practice. So these 6 dispositions, these are the pillars of a positive or a wholesome human character. If you've got your character built on those 6 pillars, you're going to be pretty good to go. Now, the 6 refinements, they are meditative and life skill practices that are learned and then realized gradually as we practice thoughts of enlightenment. Thinking about how you can be generous, that's a thought of enlightenment. Looking deeply with some rigorous self-honesty at the consequences of your ethical behaviors, those are thoughts of enlightenment. Looking at how you view others. This is a biggie for most people. We can find ourselves judging others without ever even knowing their name, right? Well, these are thoughts of enlightenment when we realize we're doing these things. Thinking about, hey, what can I do next? What's my next move in life? What can I imagine my next step to be? That's a thought of enlightenment. When you're mindful of your emotions, just yesterday I had a situation where emotions started to rise up, and when you have that realization that, wait a minute, emotions, they're just outside phenomena, they're not me, I can deal with it, that's a thought of enlightenment. And then when you say, I'm going to study this, or I'm going to practice this, or I'm going to listen to this, when you work to develop more wisdom, when you set out with that intent, that's a thought of enlightenment. Right? This is leading you toward that. Happy Friday, Rolo. Good to see you. So, thinking about these things are thoughts of enlightenment, and they are the practices of a bodhisattva in training, which, of course, we all are. So what we're talking about here today, too, is building character, right? It's a big part of Buddhist practice, is building that wholesome, positive, human flourishing kind of character. So character, then. Your own character, that's simply the identity that you shape through the decisions that you make. It's other people that are interested in your character, right? So they see through the decisions you make the shape of your character. There's no denying, too, that your identity is partially shaped by genetics, right, by our families. It is partially shaped by our friends. It's certainly by the experiences that we have. And then all these other causal forces that we encounter during our life, these causal factors and influences. Right? All of these things come together to help us develop our character. These things can be good, they can be not so good. But in the end, character is not given to us. It's not found. We develop it and we nurture it. You can choose to think and act generously, or you can choose miserly. You can choose to allow dogma, these firm, set in stone kind of rules to guide your ethics. Or you can choose to use skillful means and act situationally within some, let's call them proper guidelines or appropriate guidelines, like the Eightfold Path. You can choose to accept the world as it is, or you can complain and bitch about it when it isn't how you want it to be. These are your choices. You can choose to believe you are separate from the universe, or you can engage the universe as the unique aspect of it that you are. And let me just say, trust this, that even if you reject the universe, if you say, oh, no, man, I'm separate from the universe, well, the universe won't reject you because you are an expression of it. But again, these are our choices. We can try these things. So the six perfections provide the image of the ideal of living with thoughts of enlightenment, of realizing moments of enlightenment, right? When you act generous, when you act with acceptance, when you use your wisdom or you try to develop your wisdom, these are all the ideals of living within this idea of thoughts of enlightenment or moments of enlightenment. Now, the Greeks called this the ideal of a good life. I like that. The ideal of a good life. That's what we want, right? We'd like that for others, too. We all have times when we imagine doing something better or being better, right? We all imagine that at one point or another. The trick, though, is to taking that daydream of, man, I'm going to be better, and turning it into a full-blown reality by stepping away from the thought and taking the actions, right? Putting the effort into it, putting the vitality into it. Give yourself some generosity of spirit for a change. Offer that to yourself. Again, these are the way we think, or we have thoughts of enlightenment. Right? It's the idea that our thoughts are something that we're using to work toward enlightenment, whatever that may be. So in the beginning, you're going to encounter some hindrances. Right? Some hindrances to what I like to call character building 101. One of these hindrances is lack of imagination. It's lack of the imagination of what you as an individual are capable of doing with your life. Don't set the bar at average. There's no fun in that. Set the bar at excellence. Let your thoughts of enlightenment provide a challenge and then move you to aspire to it. So the idea that we would want to set our bar at average, that's not thoughts of enlightenment. Thoughts of enlightenment is when you say, no, I'm going to set my bar at excellence, and I'm just going to keep working toward that. Am I sure I'm going to make it there? No. But man, I'm going to keep trying. So, lack of imagination, that's a hindrance. Now, there's a thought of enlightenment. Somebody has what they think is a thought of enlightenment, and it's based on this perceived entitlement, or what I like to call the I deserve it syndrome, or their thought of enlightenment is based on a goal that no human being could reach. Well, then this is not a thought of enlightenment because it doesn't have any usefulness. It doesn't have anything effective to it, right? Effective within our lives. Because, for example, if you set a goal for yourself that really just can't be reached, then what's going to happen when you don't reach it, right? It could end up being a big source of suffering, right, if we let it. So we want our concepts to be attainable, and we want them to be worthy of these Buddhist ideals that we've set for ourselves. We don't want it to be a fantasy. And I'm going to tell you, here's a big fantasy. I want world peace in my lifetime. Well, that's fantastic. It's fantastic to work toward world peace in my lifetime. Can't fault anybody for working toward it, as long as there is the reality held on to that it likely isn't going to happen, that thought doesn't deter us from working toward it. That takes a thought of enlightenment, right? You say, look, I'd like this to be my goal, world peace in my lifetime. But honestly, I know that that's not going to happen, but it's not going to keep me from trying. Now, when you have an authentic thought of enlightenment, what's going to happen is you're going to have looked at your potential, and you're going to have looked at your abilities in an honest way, a rigorously self-honest way. You're going to take all this into account, and then you're going to realize that you have the flexibility of practice and of knowledge and of experience to actually meet challenging situations when they come up. You begin to exhibit this unmistakable intent of the pursuit of positive development. That's an authentic thought of enlightenment. These things that move you forward in human flourishing, that move you toward a more wholesome personal character, that move you toward acting more like a bodhisattva in training, these are thoughts of enlightenment. Thoughts and activities that bring you closer to that goal, those are thoughts of enlightenment. So, thought of enlightenment, then we partner it with this engaged Dharma concept, like I've said over and over today, moments of enlightenment. And these are the moments that, no matter how fleeting they are, they can come and go real quick. This is when we realize our place in the universe matters. Then when we say, working toward a more wholesome, positive personal character, that's a good thing. It matters to how the universe is going to operate around me. So I'm going to go after it. So it's kind of what I like to call an aha moment, right? It's when we clearly recognize that, hey, we are both cause and effect. We are the way we are because of all these causal influences and causal factors and causal conditioning. But we're also the effect because what we do matters. We come to realize that we are unique expressions of the universe, and we are integral parts of that universe. Instead of this being a final goal for a bodhisattva in training to attain, instead, we look at these more as a thought, just the thought that we get, these flashes, by developing our awareness to a deeper level, by accepting what we can and can't do in any given situations, and by taking appropriate actions whenever we can. This is not only the realm of the bodhisattva in training, it is the realm of all of us. Because we have the potential, right? We have that Buddha nature, that Buddha element, and we just need to realize it. Let's be clear, enlightenment is not a destination. It's not a place you can go and set up your lawn chair and set up your side table and have a cold glass of iced tea and watch the sun go down. It's not a destination. Enlightenment is the act of being awakened or coming to realization. Having moments of enlightenment is a mind-mediated change in how we see and relate to the world. This is how enlightenment becomes effectiveness. There are some people that spend a lot of time trying to get to enlightenment, but they're not doing anything effective along the way, which makes that kind of impossible to happen, maybe. In a moment of enlightenment, the person recognizes through and through that what he or she does matters. That we are not powerless, meaningless creatures just out here navigating this hostile world. Because in a causal world, we are empowered, and we're meaningful beings making our own paths. We are the creators of our world. This is a term you hear in Buddhism. We are the creators of our world. And it deserves just a little sidebar here. This is not saying that we create the earth by our thoughts and stuff. No, we create how we interact with phenomena around us. That's what we create. That's our world. Thoughts of enlightenment, we practice them. All these different things like generosity of spirit and acceptance and vitality and all that, we practice them so they become habitual. So they're thoughts that will lead to actions that are deemed useful and productive in their unique situations. And this will lead us to having moments of enlightenment. But enlightenment casts shadows. So let's see what some other folks say about enlightenment. Different Buddhist teachers in different Buddhist cultures at different times have conceived the thought of enlightenment in somewhat different ways. They engage in different practices and lead intriguingly different kinds of enlightened lives. Although initially troubling, this complexity and diversity in Buddhism is enormously beneficial, a gift to Buddhists and in the long run to the world. Now that was Dale Wright. That's from his book, The Six Perfections, which is all about the Prajnaparamita text and all that. And, he's saying, this is why we can't tell you what enlightenment is. We can't describe it to you because it's complex. And the diversity within the Buddhist traditions of what is expected in enlightenment can be different. But in the end, if you get enlightened, you'll know it. If you're practicing and you're being, open-minded and open-hearted and you are really putting the effort into it and stuff, if you have a moment of enlightenment, you will know it. Now, Zhigong Trungpa. I've talked about him on occasion here. Some of you guys know he's kind of one of my go-to guys. He's the founder of the Shambhala Center. He's venerated for living an enlightened life. Right? He's looked on now as being an enlightened being. But yet he smoked, and not just cigars, by the way. He drank, and he engaged in sexual activity with his disciples. But his example went from traditional adherence to Buddhist ideals. He was very traditional in the beginning. Then he moved to the States, to I think it was Ireland first, and then to the States. And along the way, he learned situational adherence to Buddhist ideals. In other words, taking the ideals and making them fit into this new way of living that he found himself in. But then he went to seemingly no adherence to Buddhist ideals, i.e. smoking, drinking, and engaging in, let's call it, sexual activity. But then, before his death, he finds his way back to strict adherence before he died. But he's still, again, looked at as an enlightened being because there's a belief that he acted the way he did to show others the way out of ego, to show the path that ego could take and that we could let go of it in the end. So his life, and if you read his life story or watch Crazy Wisdom on Netflix or whatever, you can see thoughts of enlightenment. You can also see the opposite, right? Well, that's all of us. We all have times like that. Maybe not to that extreme. Well, then there's the late John Dado Laurie from Zen Mountain Monastery, and he's also recognized as having lived an enlightened life. His efforts to teach Zen to an American audience while still pursuing interests in art and writing make him a great example for thoughts of enlightenment. Let me give you one thought of enlightenment that not only he had, but he passed on to, I'm going to guess, thousands that came through and took his precept courses. He offered to the precept holders that if they erred against their vows, right, if they made a mistake, that they were to accept it as part of being a human being and to just do better next time. That was a thought of enlightenment. So you look around to find people that set the example of how you want to live. There are thoughts of enlightenment that are important to consider when you look to emulate the lives and actions of others. There is no perfect model of an encompassing and corrective life that you can copy, because no one has had exactly the same situations or experiences you have had. You can see their lives as a guide, but never as a blueprint for the entirety of your own life. Be mindful that the causal process of the universe is an equal opportunity state. Moments of enlightenment happen all the time, and it is only human beings that have the capacity to see the value in these experiences. Enlightening moments take on importance because you have a level of self-awareness and of mindfulness that can recognize them and then learn from them. But thoughts of enlightenment or enlightening moments are a continuous process that has no end point, it has no destination. So you've got to continuously practice in order to realize them. You exist in an impermanent universe. Nothing is immutable and static. Everything goes through change. Thoughts of enlightenment and moments of enlightenment are part of that same dynamic process. One, thoughts of enlightenment act as intent. Moments of enlightenment act as the event. Enlightenment can be a goal as long as it is understood that the ideal of the goal will be subject to the realities of life. Enlightenment can be a moment. It can be here and gone. But it will be a moment that strengthens your practice and your perception of your own potential. Enlightenment comes in a wide variety of experiences, and your challenge is to learn to be aware of those moments of enlightenment when they happen to you. Now, if you've got it in your head, well, maybe I could watch out and see if other people have moments of enlightenment. Don't even try that, because you won't. We are the only ones that can experience our moments of enlightenment and know what they are. Your life and character must be shaped from your circumstances and your experiences. While we can draw on the examples of others, it is through experiential verification that we decide how their thoughts of enlightenment work in the context of our own unique life. Like, I might look at Chogyam Trungpa and see the message and the lessons within his life, but I couldn't live his life. Now, this whole thing about thoughts of enlightenment, it highlights what I see as a major reason that Siddhartha Gautama repeatedly reminded his disciples and followers that he was not a god. Siddhartha recognized that the alleviation of suffering would have to be accomplished by human beings, and they would need human examples of how to be in their own lives. A transcended being or a god was no longer human, and so could not stand as a model of how human beings should think and act. It was Siddhartha's humanity that serves as the brightest example of what each of us can be. It was Siddhartha's humanity that is the brightest example. Thoughts of enlightenment, they include things like when you take a moment to consider the Eightfold Path before acting, or you find yourself mindful of your anger before it completely manifests, or you perform an act of altruism or loving kindness, and you never once think, wow, what's in this for me? These are all examples of encompassing and corrective thoughts that become actions, right? And those actions become moments of enlightenment. And with practice and commitment, you can weave these thoughts and moments of enlightenment into your character as you start being more aware of them and being more mindful of them.